Liberation from expectations is the realization that much of the stress and anxiety we carry stems not from our own desires, but from the perceived demands of others. We spend countless hours curating our lives to fit into molds defined by societal standards, family pressures, or the fleeting opinions of strangers. This creates a cycle where our actions are dictated by the imagined scrutiny of others, locking us into a pattern of performance rather than genuine living. The truth, however, is that most people are too consumed with their own concerns to truly notice or evaluate our lives. Their approval, disapproval, or indifference is often superficial, fleeting, and ultimately irrelevant. Recognizing this allows you to step out of the spotlight you believe you're under. You can let go of the fear of judgment, stop striving for unattainable perfection, and cease trying to meet expectations that may not even exist. In shedding these external expectations, you reclaim the ability to define your own path. Decisions become less about appeasing others and more about what resonates with your values and aspirations. You begin to listen to the quiet voice within, rather than the cacophony of external opinions. The illusion of centrality. The illusion of centrality is the deeply ingrained belief that we occupy a central position in the lives and thoughts of others. This perspective often stems from our own self-awareness, which we project outward, assuming others are as focused on us as we are on ourselves. We imagine that our successes are admired, our failures scrutinized, and our every action weighed and judged by those around us. Yet this belief is a mirage. The reality is that everyone else is equally engrossed in their own narratives. They are preoccupied with their worries, ambitions, insecurities, and relationships, leaving little room to truly fixate on anyone else. We are each the protagonist of our own story, but in the stories of others we are often just minor characters or background figures. This illusion of being central leads to unnecessary pressure and self-consciousness. We interpret casual glances as judgments, offhand remarks as critiques, and moments of silence as disapproval. But most of the time, these interpretations have more to do with our own insecurities than with the intentions of others. Recognizing this illusion allows us to step back and see interactions for what they are: transient moments in a complex web of lives, rather than profound evaluations of our worth. By understanding that others are more focused on themselves than on us, we begin to see the futility of overanalyzing their opinions or reactions. Freedom in insignificance. The freedom in insignificance arises when we embrace the humbling yet liberating truth that in the grand scale of the universe, our individual existence is but a fleeting moment. This perspective often feels unsettling at first, as it challenges our ego-driven need to be seen as vital and irreplaceable. However, within this realization lies an unparalleled freedom, the ability to live without the crushing weight of self-importance or the relentless pursuit of validation. When we accept our insignificance, the stakes of life suddenly feel less dire. The fear of failure diminishes because we understand that our mistakes, while impactful to us in the moment, are ultimately temporary and often forgotten by others. Insignificance releases us from the oppressive need to always get it right or leave an indelible mark, opening space for experimentation, play, and creative expression without fear of judgment. This awareness also removes the pressure of constant self-comparison. In a world where everyone is striving to stand out, the acceptance of insignificance allows us to step back and find contentment in simply being. It reminds us that we don't have to measure up to anyone's expectations or compete in an endless race for recognition. Instead, we can focus on the richness of our experiences, the connections we form, and the beauty of the present moment. Moreover, insignificance fosters humility and a deeper sense of interconnectedness. When we no longer see ourselves as the center of existence, we begin to appreciate the intricate web of life in which we are a part. This shift broadens our perspective, helping us see the world not as a stage for our personal dramas, but as a vast, collective dance where every participant matters equally in their smallness. The dance of life. The dance of life is the unfolding of existence as an intricate, spontaneous, and interconnected process that defies rigid control or prediction. Life is not a problem to be solved or a task to be completed, but a rhythm to be felt, a flow to be embraced, and a melody to move with. Like any dance, it is both structured and free, guided by certain natural laws, yet open to improvisation. We often approach life as though it were a linear journey with definitive milestones: education, career, relationships, success, and eventual retirement, each step carefully planned and executed. This mindset reduces life to a mechanical series of events, robbing it of its inherent spontaneity. The dance of life, however, is not about reaching a destination. It is about engaging fully with each moment as it unfolds. In this dance, we are both the dancer and the music. Our actions influence the rhythm of our lives, just as the rhythm influences our actions. It is a dynamic interplay, not a rigid script. The beauty of the dance lies in its unpredictability. The twists and turns, the stumbles and recoveries, all add to the richness of the experience. To truly join the dance of life, we must let go of the need for certainty and control. Much of our anxiety stems from the futile attempt to choreograph every step, fearing that one misstep will ruin the entire performance. But life, like a dance, is forgiving. It allows room for error, encourages adaptation, and thrives on spontaneity. The stumbles are not failures, they are opportunities to learn new movements, to find new rhythms, and to discover grace in imperfection. The dance of life also teaches us to be present. When we are caught up in regret over past missteps or anxiety about future uncertainties, we miss the beauty of the moment. Dancing demands our full attention. It calls us to feel the ground beneath our feet, to listen to the music of our surroundings, and to move with the flow of the present. In doing so, we connect deeply with ourselves and the world around us. This dance is not a solo performance. We are constantly interacting with others, sharing rhythms, exchanging energies, and co-creating the music of existence. Each interaction, whether harmonious or discordant, is a part of the larger composition. Even conflicts and challenges become part of the choreography, teaching us resilience and adaptability. The dance of life is also a reminder of impermanence. Just as a dance begins and ends, so too does every moment, every experience, every relationship. This impermanence is not something to fear, but to celebrate. It infuses each step with urgency and meaning, reminding us to dance fully while the music plays. In embracing the dance of life, we learn to release the ego's need for constant validation. The joy of dancing does not come from how others perceive us, but from the sheer pleasure of movement itself. It is not about performing for an audience, it is about being alive to the rhythm of existence. As we move through the dance, we begin to see that the distinctions we draw between success and failure, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, are artificial. The dance encompasses it all, weaving every experience into the fabric of life. It is through this interplay of contrasts that the dance becomes meaningful, vibrant, and whole. The dance of life invites us to embrace uncertainty, to trust in the process, and to find joy in the act of living itself. The transience of attention. The internal validation. Internal validation is the practice of seeking worth and approval from within rather than relying on external sources to define our value. It is the quiet but profound recognition that our sense of self should not be dictated by the fleeting opinions, judgments, or standards imposed by others. Instead, it is cultivated through a deep connection with our inner truth, a deliberate choice to honor who we are without the need for constant applause or affirmation. The pursuit of external validation often leads to a precarious existence, where our self-esteem is tied to factors beyond our control. Praise can uplift us, but criticism can just as easily bring us crashing down. This dependency creates a cycle of anxiety where we constantly strive to meet expectations that may not even align with our authentic selves. Internal validation breaks this cycle by grounding us in a stable foundation, one that is not swayed by the ever-changing tides of external approval. To cultivate internal validation, we must first recognize our inherent worth. This requires dismantling the conditioned belief that our value is tied to achievements, appearances, or others' perceptions. It involves looking inward and appreciating ourselves for qualities that are intrinsic: our resilience, our compassion, our creativity, and our ability to grow. These are aspects of ourselves that remain regardless of whether anyone else acknowledges them. Internal validation also requires self-awareness and honesty. It is not about ignoring feedback or isolating ourselves from the world. Rather, it is about discerning which voices to listen to and which to let go. When we validate ourselves, we become the primary judge of our actions, guided by our principles and values rather than external pressures. This does not mean we dismiss others' input entirely, but we weigh it against our own sense of truth, ensuring it complements rather than dictates our path. A key aspect of internal validation is learning to celebrate our progress and achievements without the need for external recognition. It means being able to acknowledge our efforts even in the absence of applause and finding fulfillment in the process rather than the outcome. This mindset allows us to pursue goals that genuinely matter to us, rather than those designed to impress or satisfy others. Equally important is the ability to self-soothe in moments of failure or rejection. Internal validation gives us the strength to weather criticism or setbacks without internalizing them as reflections of our worth. Instead of seeking comfort or reassurance from others, we learn to offer it to ourselves, cultivating a sense of inner security that cannot be easily shaken. In practicing internal validation, we also free ourselves from the exhausting need to compare. When our value comes from within, we are less concerned with measuring ourselves against others and more focused on our unique journey. This creates space for authenticity and growth, as we are no longer confined by the fear of not meeting external benchmarks or societal ideals. Internal validation fosters a sense of autonomy and self-empowerment. It allows us to take ownership of our lives, to make choices that align with who we truly are, and to embrace both our strengths and imperfections. By anchoring our sense of self internally, we create a source of stability and peace that remains steadfast even amidst the uncertainties and challenges of life. Embrace vulnerability. To embrace vulnerability is to accept and reveal the parts of ourselves that feel raw, imperfect, or uncertain. It is the courage to stand exposed, unshielded by masks of invincibility, and to admit that we, like all others, are human, flawed, fragile, and unfinished. While vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, it is, in truth, a profound strength, for it requires an openness that many fear to approach. Vulnerability is the gateway to authenticity. When we hide behind facades of perfection, we not only distance ourselves from others, but also from our true selves, The effort to maintain an image of invulnerability can be exhausting, leading to disconnection and isolation. By embracing vulnerability, we drop these pretenses and allow ourselves to be seen as we are. In doing so, we create space for real connections, relationships built not on appearances but on honesty and trust. To be vulnerable is to admit that we do not have all the answers and that we cannot control every outcome. It is the willingness to take risks, to face uncertainty, and to step into the unknown without guarantees. This openness to the unpredictable is not a flaw but a vital part of growth. In vulnerability, we find the courage to try, fail, and learn. It is through these experiences that we discover resilience and the ability to adapt. Vulnerability also deepens our empathy and compassion. When we recognize and embrace our own struggles and insecurities, we become more attuned to the humanity in others. Instead of judging or distancing ourselves, we see their vulnerabilities as reflections of our own. This shared understanding fosters a sense of connection that transcends superficial differences. Embracing vulnerability requires us to confront the fear of rejection, criticism, or failure. These fears often stem from the belief that to be vulnerable is to invite harm or judgment. But vulnerability does not mean exposing oneself recklessly. It means choosing openness in situations where it matters, where it allows for growth, healing, or deeper connection. It is the act of sharing our truth, even when it feels uncomfortable, because we value the authenticity it brings. In embracing vulnerability, we also begin to see it as a source of creativity and innovation. The willingness to take risks and expose untested ideas is what drives progress and discovery. Artists, thinkers, and pioneers often thrive not because they avoid vulnerability, but because they embrace it, channeling it into their work and vision. It is through this openness that they push boundaries and create something new. To embrace vulnerability is to reject the illusion of perfection. It is to understand that our worth is not diminished by our struggles or mistakes, but is instead enhanced by our willingness to face them. When we embrace vulnerability, we allow ourselves to be whole, to include every aspect of our humanity, and to live with a sense of freedom that comes from no longer needing to hide. Cosmic perspective. The cosmic perspective invites us to step outside the confines of our individual lives and view ourselves as part of the vast, intricate tapestry of the universe. It is a lens through which the minutiae of daily concerns are dwarfed by the enormity of existence, where the worries that consume us dissolve in the face of the boundless expanse of time and space. This perspective is not an act of diminishing our importance, but a recognition of the profound interconnectedness and shared origins of all things. From the cosmic perspective, our planet is seen as a single fragile sphere, suspended in the void, a pale blue dot in an endless sea of stars. This view reveals the arbitrariness of human divisions, the triviality of borders, and the futility of conflicts over power or resources. It reminds us that the lines we draw to separate us from them are artificial constructs, meaningless when viewed against the backdrop of the infinite. We are, in essence, a singular species, sharing one home and one destiny. This perspective also illuminates the brevity of our existence. On the cosmic timescale, human lifespans are but fleeting moments, and the civilizations we build are ephemeral. While this may seem humbling, it also brings clarity. It challenges us to focus on what truly matters, not the accumulation of material wealth or superficial accolades, but the paradox of care. The paradox of care lies in the delicate balance between giving and receiving, and the complexities that arise when we try to navigate our desire to care for others while also caring for ourselves. On one hand, we are taught that love, compassion, and support are the highest virtues, that to care for others is to be truly human. On the other, we often neglect ourselves in the process, finding that in our efforts to serve others, we lose touch with our own needs, desires, and well-being. Care, in its purest form, is an act of generosity and outpouring of energy, love, and attention toward those we value. Yet when care becomes a one-sided affair, when it is given without regard for its cost, it can turn into a burden. The more we care for others, the more we might feel depleted, as though there is not enough of ourselves to go around. In this way, care begins to feel like a paradox. It nourishes others, but simultaneously drains us, leaving us wondering where our own energy, our own self-compassion has gone. The paradox deepens when we consider the role of expectation in care. We care for others out of love, but often we expect something in return, whether it is recognition, gratitude, or even simply a sense of fulfillment. We hope that our care will be reciprocated, and yet care is really a balanced exchange. When we begin to expect or demand something in return for our efforts, the act of care shifts from a selfless gesture to a transactional one. What was once an expression of love becomes a calculation, leading to disappointment when the reciprocity we desire does not materialize. Moreover, the paradox of care involves our relationship with vulnerability. To care deeply for someone is to expose ourselves to the possibility of loss, disappointment, or hurt. We open ourselves up to the other's needs, and in doing so, we risk being hurt or rejected. The act of care, therefore, is fraught with vulnerability, and the more we care, the more we expose ourselves to the potential for pain. In this vulnerability, care is both a gift and a risk, a source of connection and a path to possible heartbreak. This paradox is also reflected in the dynamic between self-care and care for others. In our society, self-care is often seen as indulgent or selfish, while caring for others is revered as noble and virtuous. Yet, without the foundation of self-care, our capacity to truly care for others is limited. The paradox here is that in taking the time to nurture ourselves by resting, reflecting, or pursuing our own passions, we are not only honoring our own needs, but also enhancing our ability to show up fully for others. Care is not a finite resource. When it is directed inward, it can expand outward in more meaningful ways. However, the balance between self-care and care for others is difficult to achieve. We may feel guilty for taking time for ourselves, as though focusing on our own well-being is a betrayal of those who depend on us. This guilt often feeds the cycle of overgiving, where we push our needs aside to meet the demands of others. Yet in this imbalance we risk burning out, becoming resentful, or losing the very energy that made us capable of care in the first place. The paradox of care also extends to how we care for the world around us. Our desire to protect and nurture the environment, to advocate for justice and fairness, often leads us into activism and causes that demand much of our time, energy, and attention. Yet, in doing so, we can become overwhelmed by the enormity of the world's problems, leaving us feeling powerless or defeated. The more we care about the world, the more we may feel the weight of its suffering, and the more we are confronted with the limitations of our own ability to make a difference. This paradox reveals the tension between our desire to care and our inability to solve every problem. In all these dimensions, the paradox of care challenges us to examine the boundaries of our compassion. It asks us to find a way to give without exhausting ourselves, to nurture without expectation, and to love without losing ourselves in the process. It calls us to understand that care is not about perfection or sacrifice, but about balance, about being generous with others while also being kind and mindful toward ourselves. Detach from ego. To detach from the ego is to release the illusion of separateness, the false identification with the self as an isolated and distinct entity. The ego thrives on the belief that we are separate from the world around us, that we are independent, autonomous beings whose worth is defined by achievements, opinions, and comparisons. This attachment to the ego fuels the desire for control, recognition, and validation from others. It is the root of pride, insecurity, and fear, and it blinds us to the interconnectedness of all things. Detaching from the ego is not about rejecting the self, but rather about seeing beyond the self, recognizing the fluidity of our identity and the impermanence of our individual roles. The ego clings to ideas of superiority and inferiority, constantly measuring our value in relation to others. It operates on a system of dualities, right and wrong, success and failure, good and bad, and binds us to a constant cycle of striving and judgment. In this state, we are forever trapped in the game of comparison, measuring ourselves against standards that are not truly our own, but are instead imposed by societal expectations or personal insecurities. To detach from the ego is to step out of this cycle, to release the need to prove ourselves or to seek approval. It is to recognize that our worth does not depend on how we measure up to others, but on our ability to simply be. Detaching from the ego also involves relinquishing the need for control. The ego seeks to dominate situations, manipulate outcomes, and assert its will on the world. It believes that by maintaining control, it can protect itself from harm and shape its environment to its liking. Yet the more we cling to control, the more we become enslaved by it. Detaching from the ego is to accept the impermanence and unpredictability of life, to embrace the unknown with trust and openness. It is an acknowledgement that while we can influence certain aspects of our lives, much is beyond our control, and surrendering to this truth can bring peace. When we detach from the ego, we also shed the weight of past identities and future expectations. The ego is constantly trying to reconcile who we once were with who we think we should be, creating tension between past regrets, future ambitions, and the present moment. This constant mental chatter prevents us from fully experiencing life as it is. To detach from the ego is to release the need to define ourselves by past mistakes or future aspirations. It is to live in the present, free from the burdens of self-judgment and expectation, and to accept that who we are is not a fixed state, but a fluid and evolving process. Detaching from the ego also opens the door to deeper empathy and connection with others. The ego's sense of separateness creates boundaries between us and the world, often leading to feelings of alienation, competition, or even hostility. When we let go of the ego, we begin to see others not as competitors or threats, but as fellow travelers on the same journey. We recognize that their struggles and triumphs are not so different from our own, and this recognition fosters a sense of shared humanity. Detaching from the ego allows us to approach others with openness and compassion, free from judgment or fear. This process is not about renouncing the self entirely, but rather about observing the ego from a place of awareness. We begin to see the ego for what it truly is, a collection of thoughts, beliefs, and stories that we have come to identify with, but which are not the essence of who we are. When we detach from the ego, we can still engage with the world, pursue goals, and fulfill roles, but we do so without the attachment to outcomes or the need to define ourselves through them. Our actions become expressions of our true nature rather than attempts to bolster an inflated sense of self. Celebrate the now. To celebrate the now is to embrace the present moment with full awareness, to immerse ourselves in the richness of the here and now without distraction or attachment. It is an invitation to step away from the past, which is already gone, and the future, which is yet to arrive, and to anchor ourselves in the only time that truly exists, the present. The concept is deceptively simple. yet it holds the key to living a life of deeper fulfillment and meaning. Too often we are consumed by the stories of what has been or what might be, which leaves us blind to the beauty of the moment unfolding right in front of us. Celebrating the now begins with the realization that the present is the only time we can truly experience life. The past, with all its memories and regrets, is a mere echo that no longer holds power unless we continually revive it in our minds. The future, with its uncertainties and projections, is an illusion that exists only in our imagination. Both are, in essence, out of reach. What is real and tangible is only this moment. The present is where all of life's richness resides, and it is here, in the now, that we must learn to truly live. To celebrate the now is to recognize the preciousness of the moment and to cultivate gratitude for all that is happening around us and within us. When we embrace the present, we acknowledge that each moment is unique, unrepeatable, and fleeting. The joy of breathing, the warmth of the sun on our skin, the sounds of nature or human connection, these are all gifts that exist only in this precise instant. Rather than waiting for something in the future to bring us happiness or fulfillment, we learn to find joy in the simple, everyday occurrences that we often take for granted. One of the most profound ways to celebrate the now is through mindfulness, becoming fully engaged in whatever we are doing without distraction or judgment. This means allowing ourselves to be present with our thoughts, emotions, and actions as they arise without rushing to change or control them. Whether we are eating, walking, working, or spending time with loved ones, mindfulness invites us to experience each moment as it is, without the need to label it as good or bad. We simply observe, feel, and be. This act of presence, of paying attention with an open heart, transforms ordinary activities into extraordinary experiences. Another essential aspect of celebrating the now is letting go of the constant pressure to achieve or accomplish. In modern life, we are often conditioned to focus on the next goal, the next milestone, the next success. While ambition and progress are important, they can easily distract us from the richness of the present. The constant striving for more, for the next thing, can lead to a feeling of never being truly satisfied, no matter how much we achieve. By focusing our attention on the present, we break free from the cycle of perpetual striving and discover that true contentment lies in the moment, not in what we are doing or what we will do next. In celebrating the now, we also find freedom from the burdens of worry and anxiety. Much of our mental energy is often spent on things that haven't happened yet, fears of failure, doubts about the future, or the imagined consequences of our actions. When we focus on the present, we realize that most of these worries are just stories we tell ourselves. The future is unknown and ever-changing, and the only power we have over it is what we do in the present moment. By letting go of future-based anxiety, we give ourselves permission to experience the now without fear of what may come. Similarly, letting go of the past is essential to fully embracing the present. The past can hold us captive in memories, regrets, or past identities, and it can create a distorted lens through which we see ourselves and the world. When we continually look backward, we miss the opportunities that are right in front of us. The act of celebrating the now involves releasing the grip the past has on us and choosing to live in the present. This doesn't mean we forget or dismiss our past, but rather we accept it as a part of our journey and allow it to inform who we are today without controlling or limiting us. To celebrate the now also means honoring the impermanence of life. Everything is in constant flux, and every moment is a reminder of the transient nature of our existence. We cannot hold on to any moment, nor can we stop time. This awareness of impermanence invites us to appreciate the fleeting beauty of life. It reminds us that time, like the river, flows constantly forward, and we can never recapture the moments that have already passed. Instead of mourning what is lost, we learn to cherish what is here now, recognizing that life's beauty lies in its ever-changing nature. Celebrating the now invites us to surrender to the flow of life. When we stop resisting the present and release our need to control, we allow ourselves to be carried by the current of the moment. This doesn't mean we become passive or complacent, but rather that we let go of the need to push, struggle, or force outcomes. We become more adaptable, more open to the spontaneity and creativity that arise in the present. Life unfolds naturally when we allow ourselves to be present and engaged with it, rather than trying to force it into predefined plans or expectations. Celebrating the now also fosters a sense of connection with the world around us. When we are fully present, we begin to notice things that might otherwise slip by: small details, fleeting interactions, the subtle beauty of nature, and the energy of those we encounter. In these moments of presence, we reconnect with the interconnectedness of all things. We realize that we are not separate from the world, but an integral part of it. Each moment is a dance between ourselves and everything else, and in embracing the now, we join the rhythm of life. This act of presence, of celebrating the now, is also a path to deeper self-awareness. As we immerse ourselves in the moment, we become more attuned to our inner world, our thoughts, emotions, and reactions. This awareness allows us to notice patterns, beliefs, and behaviors that we may not have been conscious of before. We begin to understand ourselves more fully, not in the context of the past or the future, but as we are right now. This understanding fosters acceptance and compassion as we come to see ourselves as we truly are, without judgment or expectation. To celebrate the now is to engage with life wholeheartedly, to experience each moment with an open heart and mind. It is to move through the world with a sense of wonder and curiosity, seeing beauty in the ordinary and embracing life's mysteries without needing to understand or control them. When we celebrate the now, we are fully alive, free from the constraints of time and the limitations of the past and future.